This video is about some tips for meditation, and one in particular today. I want to talk about sleep and the draw of sleep in meditation. When I decided to do this, I thought, it came to mind the poem of we learnt at school. I don't know, I expect a number of you may have done it at school. It's one of the first poems I remember learning at school, and that was by Robert Frost. The title of the poem was Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening. And I'll read it to you first. Whose woods are these, I think I know. His house is in the village though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near, between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. He gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake, the only other sound the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. Now, there's lots of things that I think Frost there intended in that poem, but the one thing that I feel comes out of it is this idea, like the woods there are like drawing you, almost like a siren's voice, into unconsciousness, you know. It's like the path is beautiful because it's covered in crisp snow, but at the same time it's weary, you know. And in many ways this is a bit the way it can be for the spiritual seeker, you know. There's like the draw always to fall back again into unconsciousness, you know. You're on this divine journey, you're on this journey ultimately to divine awakening, but sometimes you want to kind of fall back into the sleep of not caring anymore, you know. You become weary almost. So I thought a beautiful poem to start with, because it kind of sets a kind of melancholy theme there in some ways. But sleep often is an enemy in some respects in meditation. Now when I teach meditation, and particularly my form of meditation I've usually taught, I teach different types, but quite often it's for people developing mediumship. You know, they first need to learn to meditate before they can connect to the spirit world. And beginners so often will fall asleep during meditation. And actually we shouldn't moan too much at beginners, I suppose, because it's new. You know, so the natural reaction is to want to fall asleep when you when you relax, you know. But the problem is it's very lazy, and it's very selfish in a development group if a person, you know, just doesn't care and lazily drops off into a sleep. It's also a big barrier to meditation, because although you will get a lovely deep sleep, it's a form of kind of what we would call tamasic sleep. It's a sleep based on ignorance, right? Now that is in many ways, and every person that goes on the path of meditation has this same problem, particularly at first, is that sleep will sometimes pull in and try to stop your meditation, you know. And it can be very frustrating that you've nodded off and you've lost your consciousness. Okay, so we must see our way through it somehow. Now my way, and I don't know, I've not read this in any other books, but I find sometimes that when I'm doing a very deep meditation, particularly if I'm working as a medium, you know, I mean, we do a meditation before we do mediumship, and there's quite a lot to explain about how the meditation for mediumship would work. But one of the things I find is, once I go through a process where I open up the chakras and various things like this, and I get to a certain point where I'm ready to move into the meditation properly and connect with the spirit world. And before that happens, I always find I get a point where there's almost like a deep weariness that comes over me. It's just like a cloud that's there, not throughout the meditation, but it's there for a moment. Now the temptation could be to step back from it, pull yourself out of meditation, fall into sleep. But what I do is I focus completely on that sense of weariness, you know. I let my whole attention come to that, and it becomes slightly uncomfortable for a while, almost a little bit painful, you know. It's like you're so tired, You can't go on. It's like you've got up at 4 o'clock in the morning, run to catch an aeroplane, got jet lag, got off at the other end, and you know that you get that period of deep weariness. Right? Sorry, I'm going to put you off meditation at this rate, but it does come for me, and I'm sure it must come for other people sometimes. I think it's all the tamasic again, the tamasic energy of the day that's been there, and it needs to be got rid of so that you can go into a sattvic meditation, a clearer, brighter, lighter meditation. So my solution has always been to completely focus on it with such intensity that I'm fully awake as I concentrate on this deep sleep sense, you know. And what happens, although it feels kind of heavy for a while, it then breaks. It almost starts to sort of break up, release, and you can just look at it, be conscious of it, and let go of it, right? So if you find sleep is a problem in your meditation, try the same way I've tried it, to give it a try, because put your full attention on it basically, and it dissipates it's like almost like the ice starts to melt, the dam starts to unbreak, and the energy can start to flow again within you. And don't be worried if you do get sleep problems when you try to meditate, because you know that is part of the process of awakening. You know, we have to awaken from a sleep, don't we? And that's what awakening is all about. And there's a couple of other tips on meditation and sleep as well here for you too. When we actually go to sleep at night, you know, it's a very powerful thing. We actually drop from, you know, consciousness into sleep in about 1/100th of a second. You know, we can't recognize that moment between waking and sleep because we've blacked out, as it were. We've gone out of our consciousness. But if you're going to sleep and you keep your attention as you drop to sleep, that moment before going to sleep and going into a deep sleep, as it were, into unconsciousness, you can actually be awake while being asleep. I'm not talking here about lucid dreaming so much. I'm talking about what they would call yoga nidra. That's being awake as you sleep, conscious of sleeping. Because when you go into sleep, that beautiful slumber that takes us and takes away it's a balm that takes away all the problems of the day and all the stresses of the day, takes all the pains of the body, everything's gone. All the troubles are gone for a while, aren't they, in sleep? But what we've actually done is become unconscious of our body, unconscious of the contents of our mind that are still there. However, the state of awakening, the state of samadhi as they call it, the state of being fully awake, is very similar to a sleep state, in a deep sleep state, in that one is, instead of being asleep, you're fully awake, and instead of having the contents of the mind, as it were, it is contentless. So one enters into an infinite state of consciousness, of being and bliss, you know, Sat Chit Ananda, the absolute state of openness and awareness. And sleep, deep, full, deep sleep, is like that, but not being conscious of it. Okay, so we can become fully conscious in sleep. This is something that the yogis teach us. And just before I leave this subject, I want to add one more interesting thing that is a technique that Yogananda used to teach. I found it very useful, particularly if you're a person who has an extremely busy day with a lot to learn, a lot to do, a lot to integrate, or you've had a day particularly where a lot's gone on, you know, a real major day, like Christmas or a wedding or something where there's a lot happening, you know, because all that information needs to be integrated into you. So one of the techniques he used to suggest, that when a person goes to sleep, and this is not just for the busy days, but also any day actually, is as you're dropping to sleep, to go through every single little aspect of what's happened in the day from the moment you woke up. Everything you can possibly remember as you're dropping to sleep. You know, how you got up, you brushed your teeth, what colour socks did you put on, you know, every little tiny detail, let it unfold, and it'll unfold quite quickly, but it'll unfold naturally, but be totally aware of that unfolding of memory. Now the reason we do this is, on the one hand, it helps you benefit from all the things you've learnt in the day. You know, you will integrate almost with a super learning process everything that's happened in that day. So if you're a student working, this is a good thing to do, because you will quickly integrate what you've had to learn. It will help you integrate all the emotional things that happen. And let's face it, what the brain is trying to do, or partly trying to do when we sleep, is to integrate everything that's happened. You know, it's processing. You know, like we switched off the conscious mind, and the unconscious, through dreams and the rest, can process all this information with our internal biological computer. But by running through it as you go to sleep, you're actually enhancing that process and getting the work done, you know. And finally, one last tip. Remember that when you go to sleep, just as in meditation, when I've described about how I go through that kind of barrier before I can get into the more blissful states of meditation, the same thing happens with sleep. We go through a certain barrier of weariness before we drop into the bliss of sleep. So remember that what you're entering when you drop into unconsciousness is actually you're dropping into the very heart of yourself, you know, the real depth of you. You're unconscious of it, but actually what you're entering is not really sleep. You're entering a divine state. You're entering the enlightenment, but you're entering it without knowing you are. But if you remind yourself that you are entering the divinity of sleep, then sleep can become not just a balm that clears the troubles of the day, but can become part of the process of your spiritual development. It is in itself a meditation. Jane and I now do our spiritual work for our foundation. All the profits that come from things like our conferences and theatres and workshops and all those exciting things now go into this foundation, which ultimately has the long-term plan of building centres in the UK and maybe around the world one day. But meanwhile, we've been doing a lot of direct spiritual work with it. We've been going out, feeding people in India, giving to the destitute, giving to beggars. We've helped feed schools, helped orphanages, and we've even given cows to older people that have no other form of income. So mediumship can change your life, but it can also help people directly in the world. So go to the links at the end and find out all about what Jane and I are trying to do. And you can do a lot just by sharing these videos on social media. Help us get the word out. Help us to do something really good in this world. Click on this picture of me to subscribe to our channel and see all of our latest videos as soon as they're published. Or click on this next video for more of our stuff.